We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
Disseminate propaganda to influence people's minds, and this is a major function of the CIA.
Hussein and his regime are concealing their efforts to produce more weapons of mass destruction.
Welcome back to Notify America. We have multiple pressing stories to get to, stories that include what E Jean Carroll, the woman who sued Donald Trump for defamation for calling her crazy, well, guess what she's planning on spending the man's hard-earned money on? We're going to show you also an update on the southern border, as California is now seeing a massive inflow of illegal crossings. Ever since Texas successfully stemmed the flow, the cartels are now looking to shift to Plan B, apparently. Also, does defense contractor Lockheed Martin have NHI craft in their possession? Well, they were just asked again. They were asked a few months ago, and now multiple outlets are pressing them with questions, and Nancy Pelosi continues to get herself into hot water. Multiple clips this week showing her being naughty. We'll look at it. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps me out. Also, make sure you're subscribed to the channel to continue receiving these daily updates. News Nation and Fox 10 have both inquired with military contractor Lockheed Martin over allegations that they're reverse engineering NHI craft or crafts, multiple, non-human intelligence technology, i.e. UFOs. The allegation is that Lockheed is one of the military contractors who's been selected by the Pentagon years ago to work on this project, which is what the Pentagon does, by the way, with most of these top secret weapons research. They don't just develop and build all of these weapons and all the aircraft internally themselves. They dish it out to these private contractors. Doesn't mean that Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, etc. are working on these black projects out of their corporate suites or their corporate offices. What usually happens is they're required to lease land on U.S. military bases to work out of. Just like they do with like Area 51, for instance. These companies bid on certain projects and then they're required to lease space at the chosen military base that the Pentagon authorizes. Now they can sometimes work off base, but the installation has to be cleared. It's a very expensive process. Anyways, here's investigative journalist Jeremy Corbell name Lockheed Martin as one of the military contractors who are currently in possession of this technology. Watch this.
Somebody watching us chatting right now would say, Jeremy, do you know where this stuff is being kept? Where are these crafts? Where are the biologics? I mean, this is like the keys to the kingdom, if true.
Yeah, well, I can speak on generally where these programs have been sequestered to, because this is public information. I've reported on this before. When sources tell you something, you protect that information until it goes through the right process, right, John? Like
Yes.
that information, specific locations, that's the job for our government to work with these whistleblowers. But what I can tell you is places like Lockheed Martin have received contracts in order to reverse engineer some of these downed or recovered non-human technology craft. So think about Boeing, Raytheon, Lockheed. A lot of these aerospace contractors, you know, they've been given some of the technologies, some of them full craft. Like that is what I understand with Lockheed.
Wow.
So in that situation, you understand that we can't ask them, what do you got, through Freedom of Information Act requests, because that is compartmentalized. It's their information. They're not the government. So that's the way this information is hidden. But to answer your question right on the nose, there's multiple locations where these technologies are being reverse engineered. One of the companies that have some of this technology, a craft, is Lockheed Martin.
Oh my God. I mean, this stuff is wild.
Now, in response to News Nation and Fox's questions asking if you are in fact in possession of NHI craft, Lockheed Martin's press office responded by saying this, quote, "All questions about UAP need to be directed to the Pentagon," unquote. That's far from a no. If they weren't in possession of it, you'd think they would just reply and say, no, we have no idea what you're talking about. But they didn't. They said that 2 times. Both times they were asked, they said the same thing. Well, apparently, top executives who are aware of this, part of the program, cleared and read into the program, are beginning to get a bit nervous with all the questions and these whistleblowers coming out. Apparently, they've tried to divest themselves from this technology, give it back to the Pentagon. This is coming from both Dave Grush and Ross Coulthart, that they've made little to no progress on it. They don't know how it works, and it's more of a liability than an asset at this point. Watch.
I am aware of at least one aerospace company that is actively making moves to try to divest itself, allegedly, of one craft that it possesses.
So Lockheed Martin wanted to divest itself from this material at a specific facility that's known to me, that I provided to the Inspector General, like street address, all that shit, right?
The Texas National Guard has effectively sealed the Shelby Park crossing point in Eagles Pass, Texas, slowing the inflow of illegal immigrants way down. Crossings at Eagles Pass has reportedly fallen by around 80% since December, thanks in large part to the physical barricades National Guard have erected, physically preventing people from entering the country. Now you may think, well, why don't they just go a few miles down the road and cross there? Well, there's only certain crossing points where these illegal caravans are able to enter. There's a large wall along hundreds of miles of border in Texas. Shelby Park was one of the most popular crossing points, but this hasn't deterred the cartels, folks, who are now trafficking these people through a San Diego crossing point, Plan B they call it, a much further journey, but technically wide open. Bill Maloogian from Fox, he's the guy who actually has the border beat down there, he's looped into all of this, says Border Patrol's San Diego sector continues to see an uptick in illegal crossings. Around 1,100 people crossed yesterday alone. 97 were Chinese nationals, 91 Turkish nationals, and 850 plus were single adults. Meanwhile, Joe Biden's foreign policy is such a mess at this point. He's got himself in the middle of all of these different foreign quagmires. We have Iran now that we're on the verge of war with, possibly Israel and Hamas, Russia and Ukraine, not to mention the border crisis. He's up to his eyeballs in problems. And another story, E Jean Carroll, the woman who was just awarded $83 million of Donald Trump's hard-earned money after she sued him in New York for defamation, financing her defense, her legal defense, being financed by Reid Hoffman, by the way. She was interviewed by Rachel Maddow last night, and she was asked what she's planning on spending the money on. Will she be using it to help fund women's causes or help victims in any way? I don't think so. Watch this interview and imagine being Donald Trump and knowing that you're supposed to be giving this woman $83 million of your hard-earned money for simply calling her crazy on Truth Social. Watch this.
You've talked about using some of Trump's money that you're about to get to help shore up women's rights. Do you know what that might be, what that might look like?
Yes, Rachel. Yes.
Tell me.
I had such great ideas for all the good I'm going to do with this money. First thing, Rachel, you and I are going to go shopping. We're going to get completely new wardrobes, new shoes, motorcycle for Crowley, new fishing rod for Robbie. Rachel, what do you want? Penthouse? It's yours,
Nothing.
Rachel. Penthouse and France? You want France? You want to go fishing in France? No? Oh, all right, okay.
That's a joke.
Although if me fishing in France could do something for women's rights, I would take the hit. You know, I would obviously take one.
Nancy Pelosi has had a rough few days, all right? She's been slipping up on camera multiple times this week. First, she went on CNN and claimed that most of the Palestinian protesters in this country are orchestrated by Russia and China, saying she's going to ask the FBI to investigate the protesters, essentially. Watch.
They're in front of my house all the time. So I have a feeling for what feelings they have. But we have to think about what we're doing. And what we have to do is try to stop the suffering in Gaza. This is women and children, people who don't have a place to go. So let's address that. But for them to call for a ceasefire is Mr. Putin's message. Mr. Putin's message. Make no mistake, this is directly connected to what he would like to see. Same thing with Ukraine. It's about Putin's message. I think some of these protesters are spontaneous and organic and sincere. Some, I think, are connected to Russia. And I say that having looked at this for a long time now, as you know.
You think some of these protests are Russian plants?
I don't think they're plants. I think some financing should be investigated. And I want to ask the FBI to investigate that.
Now, if that wasn't bad enough, because remember, it's her voters, Democrats and liberals, who are largely pro-Palestine, not all of them, but enough to put her on the wrong side of the issue with her constituents. Then yesterday she's caught on camera yelling at a Chinese protester, saying something naughty, something you're not supposed to say, something she accused Donald Trump of being racist over. Watch this.
Stop the Holocaust. The Democrats want the ceasefire. The Democrats want the ceasefire. The Democrats want the ceasefire. The Democrats want the ceasefire.
She said, quote, "Go back to China where your headquarters is." I wonder why she's so confident, by the way, that these protesters are paid agents. She's telling them to their faces, like she knows something. Almost like she's seen how many protests in this country are really made up of paid actors. Who knows? All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.